Hello, my brothers from another mother. You ever heard that before? This is an episode of entrepreneurs in trucks. Not sure if you've heard of that channel before. It's a guy called Rich. He's a fellow Canadian, has a channel called Entrepreneurs in Cars. It's quite popular. And I've been cruising the internet, and I kind of visit some of these sites, and it's interesting to see what they have to say. They're men giving advice to other men, and they're usually younger men than I am. So coming from a rather different life experience, and I think maybe what we should do is we should try an episode of what I'm going to call Entrepreneurs in Trucks, in old trucks. So this guy Rich, and I think that's his name, and I'm going to put a link to his channel in the description so you can check it out. He's actually a nice guy, unlike some of these other self-help guru types, which I won't mention their names, that are a little bit full of themselves and I think kind of phonies. But yeah, Rich is a pretty laid-back sort of guy, type you wouldn't mind having a beer with, and he has his particular outlook on life. And here at the Way to Native Chronicles, well, we have maybe a little different take to share with you, and I think could also provide a little bit of advice to men as well, but of a very different nature, coming from a different background, like I am and my wife is. So, speaking of wife, that's one of the distinguishing characteristics of this is my wife and I have been married. Well, we just celebrated our 47th anniversary last Tuesday, so we've been hooked up together for quite a while. And love these guys that give advice. They're talking basically about getting women, getting women into bed and stuff like that. And they're in it for themselves, and they have an approach to life that they think works, but really it's sort of a hedonistic approach. It's a way that they use to stave off the hopelessness of the situation in modern life, which I can't totally blame them for. Things have really got messed up in the Department of Women and Men and their relationships. Men seem to have given up on women as the fairer sex to admire and to protect and cherish, and they're looking at them more like they are the enemy. They're just out to get you and use you. So they adopt all these strategies of becoming the alpha male, becoming unplugged, and all that kind of stuff. So they, this rich guy from Entrepreneurs in Cars, he's written books on it. I mean, he's an intelligent man. But I question how wise these people are, because being smart isn't enough. So when it comes to wisdom, you have to at least know what is going to work for you in life. And if you live for pleasure and hedonistic delights, then happiness, pursuing that as your main goal in life, is going to fail you, because life is cruel. You're going to lose people that you love. Bad things are going to happen to you. You can get sick. What you really want to have in life is meaning, and meaning is a whole subject we'll get into. But I mean, at the very least, if you look at people like Jordan B. Peterson, they'll tell you that that meaning will come from the relationships you build, and that's one area that these guys don't seem to even be aware of. That your best relationship, if you don't have children, you're missing out on maybe the best relationship you're going to have in your entire life, the most fulfilling and most rewarding. And there are risks with it too, but generally speaking, that's what it is. And the same thing goes with your wife. hopping around from woman to woman all your life, you may think that that's happiness, but that's going to elude you in the end. And you're going to be left with emptiness, children that don't respect you, women that hate you. You might have your cadre of buddies, but it's not. The same thing works on the women's side of the issue too. They can party all they want, but in the end, it's not going to be as good as developing those long, strong relationships. And the advice that men that like on these channels give you is really in the early stages of life. But suppose you follow all their advice and you get that top-notch woman and done all the things that they say you have to do that, to achieve that, then you got to keep her, and you got to keep a relationship going too, which is something that maybe we'll touch on in this video, because that is a thorny subject on its own. If I had to pass on something, and this is going to be episode 1 of Entrepreneurs and Trucks, okay? And when I say entrepreneurs, I mean I'm not an entrepreneur like this other guy is. I'll say I'm an entrepreneur because we have a trap line, so we're coming from pretty different places. And not driving any fancy vehicles. I haven't so-called made bank like they like to say, so that you're all of a sudden somebody. I'm just a regular guy and driving a 1994 GMC Suburban with 392,000 kilometers on it. But my wife and I, we're happy. And we've, our marriage, just like any other, has been through some ups and downs, but generally we've had a really good marriage. And if I had to start off for this episode 1 of this series on giving some advice from our perspective, I would say that the bedroom is one of those things that is going to be an issue in most marriages, maybe almost all of them, because, and I have to cover this subject very tenderly because and avoid keywords that YouTube doesn't like, but you'll get the idea, I'm sure. So when you get married, and this is all these guys from Entrepreneurs in Cars, maybe once they get married they should move over to my channel because we're going to cover what comes next here. So what comes next is you have a period of a few years where you and your spouse, or hopefully you're very passionate with each other, but in reality women do tend to kind of cool off after a few years, and that's going to be problems, lead to problems in a marriage. Almost every marriage. Sometimes it might be the opposite way around, but most of the time it's the women kind of cool down, they lose their sense of desire, they become a very different person after they're married. And the guy, he's still chasing her around, and you end up in a situation where you have a woman that is trying every trick in the book she can to avoid sex, and the guy trying every trick in the book he can to get it. And so the woman lies in bed at night and in fear and loathing of that creeping hand under the covers out to get her. She no longer will undress in front of her husband or acts silly and sexy because that might lead him on. Then he gets ideas. So that's really a distortion of what a marriage should be. Unfortunately, it's because of that imbalance. So what's the solution to that? The solution that I've very, very rarely heard that we know works is that you have to use one thing, one concept, and that's the only thing you got to remember from this video is schedule. You have to schedule. You can't just wait around until things feel right. I mean, when people are busy and they have kids especially, there is no right time. You can't just sit around and wait for the feeling to be right. then you're going to be like a lot of couples. They get after it maybe once every few months, or once a month, or twice a year. It gets to be. It's that's hardly a marriage anymore, and it doesn't have to be that way. You know, with a lot of things, if you wait till you're in the mood, it's never going to happen. But you know, once you get in the boat and you start rowing, that's when things do start to have a change in your feelings. So if you schedule these things and take into consideration how much frequently the woman in the relationship desires it, and then the man on the other hand, and you come to a middle ground, a meeting. The reason I bring this up in this video is that seems like a very simple thing, that, oh yeah, you just come to a compromise. But that compromise is super, super important. And if you want to know why that's important, it's because certainty. The man then has some certainty. And his behavior will change radically when he knows that we're going to have a little bit of fun within a few days or something like that. He knows it's coming. And the wife, she's okay with it, because this is, especially after a while, you just kind of, that's the groove you get into. So a man doesn't have to feel that he's keep on trying and probing and stuff to get after his wife. And the wife becomes a different person too. She can go and she can act silly and just like she did when she was younger. You know, she can act sexy and flirty, whatever she wants. She doesn't have to hide away when she's changing, things like that. She doesn't have to worry about being harassed when she's not in the mood, stuff like that. So that by itself is going to change a relationship quite dramatically. So that's my advice from the Way to Native Chronicles. I hope that's something that you find sensible. If you have, then by all means mention it in the comments. Click like on this video so it gets distributed better, and subscribe to the channel, of course. What I'd also like you to do is, seeing as how this is episode 1 of this series, episode 2 is not guaranteed. So it's really going to depend on how many comments, what kind of comments we get on this video, and the number of views, things like that. That's if it's, I look at the analytics on videos, and if nobody's interested in it, there's no sense beating a dead horse, right? But there's plenty of stuff to talk about on this theme of entrepreneurs and trucks, as sort of a spoof on entrepreneurs and cars, because we need in society a bit of an antidote to some of this very negative advice about men versus women in society. This is got to change, really. It's a lot of these guys have been hurt. A lot of them have been through relationships where they are from broken homes. Maybe they didn't have a father figure when they were growing up. They're raised by their mother, and they have resentment issues. They adopt. They're not sure how to be men, so they put on all these external attributes and mannerisms of being men, but really they're very uncertain, insecure people, and they just haven't had that. They're not in a position to give out the best advice. So they focus on these things about being an alpha male and stuff like that. But you know, when they get into a long-term relationship, then they're going to wind up being that beta male with the hand groping under the covers and begging their wife to show some interest in them. That's not what women like in a man at all. And once you get into that long-term relationship, you're going to have to deal with stuff like that. So I think that should be about where we wrap it up here. If you appreciate this video, then for sure click subscribe and like, and catch you on the flip side. See ya.
When you came over, my heart was on its way out. I wasn't sober and I was letting go of it all.
이때 또
Please
내가 이렇게
move
해볼까?
closer.